You're gonna see some big fish come up and eat these flies, Hobart. You gotta let them kind of eat it and then set them. And sometimes they'll just come up and whirlpool it. Oh, there's a little dink, look at him.
The Yakima River begins in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State near Cle Elum. From there it runs through Ellensburg and ends up in Yakima.
That is a good one. That was a great take, kind of hit it out of the corner of my eye, you know.
This river has gained quite a reputation for being just as good a trout stream as anything in the Rocky Mountains. Dry flying, nymphing, or streamer fishing is excellent on miles of water containing many deep holes and hungry trout. Northwest Outdoors fishing host Hobart Mans is on the water with Ellensburg, Washington guide David Child. Child runs Life is But a Dream guide service. Along with fellow guide Johnny Boitano, they are the new breed of anglers that are knowledgeable and eager to master the craft of fly fishing, especially here on the Yakima River.
I like dry fly fishing. It's like my favorite for sure.
Dave, you make it pretty simple in here. We know these fish are just outside those weed beds.
Yep.
And all you've got to do is hopefully get it over there because they are certainly aggressive this morning.
Yep, if you're looking downstream, you can read the water and pick apart the good spots. Little foam lines, little cut banks underneath the grass. Sometimes they're not always right underneath the grass. They're out a little bit in the current line or the foam line. But we're rolling some fish this morning. I pulled fish right off of the end of that cement before. And this bank has been good to me, Hobart. Let's hope it's producing for us. Right off this log, baby, baby.
There we go, yeah!
That was so cool.
The trained fish did indeed show up.
Boy, he's going up. I don't know how big this one is.
That fish has got some...
Oh, he's a nice trout.
Let's go down a little bit slower, water than you even think.
That was a good hit. Let's come over here and land this fella.
You guys got this down to a science. Here comes the train, here comes the bite.
I called that one, I think. Yeah, that train came by and the fish just came right up and smashed it. This one literally inhaled that bug and it was way in his mouth. We'll let him swim away.
Do you suppose that
there he goes.
The noise and the sound of the train going by disturbs the bugs on the bank and starts a small feeding frenzy?
I think it gets those fish looking up and they smash it.
These fish are really streamlined in here, Dave. They don't seem to have that big, deep body that you might find in some of the fish you'd catch from a lake, but they certainly have got a body designed for this river system.
They have that strong, muscular river shape to them.
You'll
catch a few that are just huge and fat too, though.
Is there a particular strain of fish that's in here, or the local native Kamloops? What?
Well, it's a native rainbow. I think the planting efforts in the throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and now they don't plant it anymore. We've got a natural reproducing fishery.
And the entire stream is catch and release?
Catch and release only to Rosa Dam, and I think down below Rosa Dam and through, you can keep a few. Tickle, tickle. I got a fish there that tickled.
Now, do any of the spawning salmon or any of the other big fish get up into the system this far?
Yeah, a lot of spring chinook, and we get a few steelhead that come up over Rosa Dam.
As a novice coming in and fishing this stream for the first time, what kind of an advice would you give to somebody in a boat or fishing the water?
Well, during the summer, we've got a high water situation. You're looking for little cut banks, little current lines that go past structure like rocks and trees and grass. And sometimes out away from the bank in the foam lines. But getting a dead drift, casting downstream is one of the big secrets. It's really hard for me as a guide to get my clients to cast downstream. For some reason, we always want to cast back upstream. But you can see we get twice as long of a drift if we cast downstream.
Yeah, you can stay on top of the linemen better that way.
You really can. Another big thing I've been stressing a ton is slackline management. Always keeping track of that slackline that's in and at your feet.
Well, I like that. And then he looks at me and says, slackline management. And boy, I'm the class example of what not to do when it comes to that.
Because we get a lot of these fish that'll hit when we least expect it. So I always try to get people to be ready all the time. After they mend, to strip in a little bit of line and to just keep on track of those bugs. He's a beautiful colored fish.
Yes, they are. But they're so aggressive today.
There is more rainbow trout fishing on the Yakima River in Washington State coming up, including Dave tying up his favorite fly pattern. First, let's head to the collector's corner with Hobart Mans. He loves to collect salmon plugs from the Northwest.
Here in the Northwest, one of the most prolific things that we're going to find in collecting of antique tackle is going to be Northwest salmon plugs. There were probably roughly 80 makers of salmon plugs between the 1920s and today. The most prolific ones were the Martin Company and Lucky Louie. And I've got a selection of those out here along with some other plugs. But first off, let's take a look at what makes a collectible plug and what makes a non-collectible plug. This is a non-collectible wooden flatfish because somebody tried to improve on the maker's patent. He repainted it, and in repainting it he destroyed the value. So this plug is currently of no great value whatsoever. The same plug, were you to find one in the yellow top glitter with a silver bottom glitter, you'll find a larger one over here. Very scarce color from the late 1930s, 1940s. A hard flatfish to find. This is the early Heelan flatfish white box with the proper plugs to go with it. So that makes that an interesting collectible. In Martin, you will see there is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 different Martin plugs out there in different configurations of body size, styles of size. They're all pretty much in the same color, the yellow scale or yellow patterns with red gill slashes. And for the most part, most all Martin plugs you'll find have a glass inset eye. The glass inset eye is the giveaway for those plugs. These plugs in good condition will surprise you as to their value. You'll find them in garage sales any place from 25 cents to a couple $3. If it's under $10, if it's in excellent condition and it's got glass eyes and the box, it's collectible. And the box will almost double its value if you've got the original box to go with the original plug. And it will add a few dollars more in value if you have the original paperwork to go with it. The paperwork will tell you how to fish the lure, what the lure will do, and where it'll go. Over here you'll see that there's a Hedden zigzag salmon size plug, very scarce. Hedden is probably the ultimate in collectible of all the lures on the market. This one's been fished, it's in honest condition, but what makes it handsome is the fact that we have the original box that it came with still with the original plug. That doesn't always happen. Lucky Louie is interesting as a Northwest collectible because of 2 things. Number one, they're still using them to fish with in Canada. They're highly sought after in certain patterns in British Columbia to fish for salmon. And number 2, Lucky Louies were made in Seaside, Oregon, Ilwaco, Washington, Seattle, and Bellingham, I believe. They were floated around the Northwest for about 20 years in different towns. So Lucky Louies are kind of neat because they moved around. Salmon plugs overall, you'll find about 100 different makers, 80 different makers throughout the Northwest. If you can find a copy of Jim Lone's book on Northwest salmon lures, it will give you every bit of information you need to know to identify these wonderful lures that you might find at garage and estate sales.
Nice!
That is a good
That's
fish.
a big fish. Whoops. Jumped right out of that net.
It's a beautiful fish.
On, who called that one? Did I tell you I'd catch one on that drift?
Oh!
Oh, big fish! That's a big fish, Omar.
Big baby.
With plenty of action from the boat, Dave decided he would try a side channel where fishing has been hot in the past.
Tell you what, there's got to be a big fish just sitting down there. There he is! I got him! Whoa, baby! This is a nice fish. Came up and just slurped it. I was concentrating so much on the hook set, and I let him eat it. Worked out for me.
Rainbow trout fly fishing on the Yakima River can be enjoyed from drift boats or hundreds of areas accessible from shore. Regulations vary though, so check the times of year it's legal to fish. On this section of the river, trout fishing can be enjoyed all year long.
There's steak knives.
Enjoying a grilled steak on the water's edge for lunch, combined with the sunshine of eastern Washington, can make this experience priceless. Before heading back out on the water, Child sits down with Hobart to tie up one of his special fly patterns.
When you're out here and you run out of lures or bait, and I know you're not fishing with bait, what do we do?
Sometimes we bring some fly tying stuff along. We could tie a bug up for our trip. This time of the year we've been throwing a lot of parachute hoppers, stimulators, Chernobyl ants, and then we've been having some good caddis hatches. This is just an elk-hair caddis. Today we're going to try a parachute Chernobyl ant. I'm going to tie that up for the rest of our trip.
Okay. We had some good luck with those this morning.
They were hitting them. First thing I do when I put a new hook in the vise is I clamp the barb down. Yakima River's barbless only. I'll coat the entire hook with thread. You coat it with thread, the fly doesn't swing around. And then I cut my little body parts of the bug out with scissors. Cut a long piece of foam out. Then I'll take that foam and with a couple firm wraps, I'll tie them right in. This day and age, there's a lot more foam flies being offered to these fish, and I love throwing them. And it gives it a great segmented look. A couple little turns of the thread on the foam. At this point, I like to cut the little tail so it has kind of a rounded look. And I'll tie in the top part of the Chernobyl. Then at this point in the fly, I'm going to put a little deer hair wing. I'm taking a piece of elk hair, I'm going to make that be a little wing. So I throw them in my stacker, and you stack it down. And when it all comes out, all the tips are together, and put them right onto the Chernobyl ant. So it gives it a little wing.
And it's uniform.
Yep. All the hairs are the same length. Then I can go in and trim all the excess. And then so nobody can see that, and for visibility purposes, I'll put a little piece of yellow foam, and I really believe that rubber legs drive the fish crazy. So this bug will actually have 2 sets of rubber legs. You can go with black, you can go with yellow, you can go with brown, whatever color you would like. So the back of the bug's done. We'll go forward, put another couple little segmented body parts in the fly. Then this is the part where we put in our parachute post. So we use a piece of white polypropylene yarn, tie it in, and hold it in my, this is how I do it, I hold it in my fingers and then go around the base of it a couple times. Then I'll tie in my hackle. I'll wrap around the parachute post. This will give it a little more floatability, a little more buggy, and some more rubber legs. So 2 sets of rubber legs on this hopper. So he has a total of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 legs. And then I wrap my grizzly hackle around the parachute post, trying to go really low on the post. And I like to give plenty of hackle, make it real buggy. Helps it float a lot better too.
And winding it that way is going to separate the veins in that hackle and let it spread out, so it'll give it some flotation too.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, this is just a lot easier and probably a lot more fun than going out and looking for grasshoppers or trying to roll rocks and find those other things, right?
Yeah. I love tying flies. It helps you to have a great appreciation for what trout eat as you learn about the different bugs. As you learn about...
Could be. Or they react to it something dramatically.
Yep. The end result is a parachute Chernobyl ant with a white parachute post and a high-vis little yellow deal. There's the underneath.
Yeah, grasshopper downside.
There's the top. The tan color is good because it'll either look like a stonefly or a hopper. And it's good for clients because it's real easy to see and sits up high on the water.
Meandering through farmland and towering hillsides, the Yakima River can be a peaceful float. During high water, there are plenty of places to try to coax a trout out of the shade. It doesn't take Guide Boitano long to hook up.
Oh, that's a nice fish.
Yep. I'm free. You're clear. Yep.
He still has a little energy. He doesn't want to come up. He's keeping his head down.
Johnny, that fish really jumped on that too.
He did. Oh. He's not ready. We got light tippet on this there, Dave.
You know, we talked about Mr. Big at lunchtime. Well, there he is.
No, I think he's ready.
Mr. Medium, anyway.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
You sure this fellow with the net knows what he's doing?
I don't know. He knows how to catch those fish, though. This morning he was a...
He looks like he wants to
I'm getting as good
stab
as
at it there.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Nice fish. Little caddis on the move there.
Again, they've got that streamlined body.
It's a good little average fish for the river right here. Little skinny guy. One thing I find with casting is clients I get in the boat is people want to go too far back on their back cast. What happens is you lose that energy in this rod. You always want to keep it up more straight up and down than coming back. And timing. Casting's all about timing, and we're fishing here. Common mistake is people going way too far back and then coming down. It's not allowing that rod to load that energy to shoot out that fly. Some rods will compensate for it, but if you have a problem casting and getting that line shooting out, try pointing that rod right straight at the sky and then coming right back down. And that'll lay that line right out for you. Oh, I've hit some big fish out of there.
You've talked about casting to the foam line all day long, and sometimes you'll look around the river and there's foam patches every place. More or less specifically, what kind of foam should I be looking for?
Well, what I look for is like the channelized. If you look right out in front of us here, you see a whole bunch of foam right here, and it looks like it's all general. Well, if you really look into detail into this foam, you'll see channelized foam within the foam. You notice right where your fly is at, with that channelized foam? Well, in the back of your mind, I always have my clients, thinking of where they're going to be casting. Instead of just blind casting, I always have them casting into foam, and then when there's a big section of foam, I like having them casting into channelized foam, meaning there's going to be more of a chance of food getting channelized in that area because you're seeing the micro seams in that water coming down, so it's a little bit better area to target fish, more of a channelized food.
That foam is more or less an indicator of what the currents are doing under the surface.
Yeah, so that's going to channelize that food into that seams. Yeah. Oh man, this is a nice one. Nice one. He came, I saw him come from the bottom. That was the coolest take I've had in a long time. Oh, don't get me in a rock. Don't get me in a rock. David, we're right here.
He is cooking. Bigger fish are starting to come back on the feed again. And they are just wild and crazy too, aren't they?
There we go.
I mean, they just flat go yippee skippy.
There we
They have
go.
to get that guy a
Nice.
longer arm
You
or
can
short,
release
or
it.
longer net, one of the two.
Another average fish for the Yakima. That's a good one.
John, that's a gorgeous fish.
Practicing catch and release with barbless hooks required, the Yakima River promises to be an excellent fishery for years to come. This stretch of Washington water produces some of the best fly fishing in the Pacific Northwest. This show ends with a visit to the butcher. Here is professional meat cutter Mike Ellis with some tips for making sausage.
Hi, we're going to give you some tips on grinding sausage. First of all, we need to sanitize everything, inside and out. All of your equipment needs to be washed with soap and water, hot soap and water, and dried off and sanitized. When you're all done, you want to put a light oil over everything when you put it away. That way it's ready for the next time. I like to mix the game with the pork when I'm grinding for the simple reason it's a lot better when you get done. Everything's totally mixed together because we're going to grind it twice. So I mix the game and the pork at the same time. Now this meat was froze and then thawed. There's no problem freezing meat and thawing it out and refreezing it again. It's done in the meat industry every day, millions of pounds. You want to keep the meat around 30 degrees. This type of sausage here, I like to put about half pork and half game because it's going to be a fresh sausage. If you were to make a Thuringer, summer sausage, pepperoni, you go ahead and leave that around 90% lean. You don't add but 10% pork. And then as far as trim goes, you want to use real nice pork trim. This is not pork kidney fat or suet or any of that type of thing. This is boneless pork butts. Okay, I've got a fresh pork sausage seasoning here that I broke down to meet the requirements on the weights. I've got a little mixing cup here. And you want to add a little water to the seasoning. It's going to help in the stuffing process. Mix the seasoning up real good and spread it out as best you can. Okay? That's not going to hurt to have a little extra water. It's just going to assist when we go to put it through the casings. You don't want it too dry. One of the errors people make is when they grind the sausage and it's too dry and stiff going into the casing. So make sure you have enough water. You can feel the texture of the meat that you want it really wet. We're going with the second grind now, a little smaller plate. You want to go through a 3/16 or 1/4 inch. Make sure that knife and plate are seated nice up against the plate when you put this on. Okay, we're grinding this the second time because we want to break down any of those little connective tissues. So everything's going to be really easy to chew. You don't want large pieces. Now, if you were just grinding straight pork, you could get by with grinding it through that larger plate, but with the game, it could tend to be a little tougher. So we want to grind, you could grind the game fine and the pork through the large hole, but we're just going to do it this way this time. Now this meat is getting mixed real nice because we mixed it when we ground it the first time. We mixed it when we added the seasoning, and we're mixing it again. So we're getting a good blend on it without a fancy mixer. Now that the meat's all prepared for the stuffer, the main thing is don't force it and don't restrict the sausage coming out. Let it flow. As you can see, it's a good lean product. It's mixed out nice. And you just pinch them off and twist them. Make it nice for hanging in the smokehouse, or a lot of times I'll take sausage like this and put it right on the barbecue. Okay, what you definitely need to know, the sausage we just stuffed earlier is ready to cook. Okay, that's a fresh sausage. It needs to be cooked. Now, we took some of that sausage and we cooked it. We used a smoker in the oven. We reached 160 degrees internal. So now it's ready to eat. So you've got two products, ready to cook, ready to eat products. Now this is ready to eat. And it's also has the nitrates in it, sodium nitrate. That's what keeps it red. No matter how long you cook it, it's going to stay red. So remember, sodium nitrates will keep the meat red, and 160 degrees is ready to eat. Okay?
Mike uses a professional grade grinder. He points out there are many different consumer grinders available on the market. There are also a variety of casings and seasonings to make jerky or summer sausage. Go online to northwestoutdoors.org to learn more about this show, 1607. On the next Northwest Outdoors, head to Lake Quinault Lodge on the Olympic Peninsula. Go hiking among 400-year-old trees. Also, get a couple of tips on making a survival shelter and edibles in the outdoors. That's on the next Northwest Outdoors.
Funding for Northwest Outdoors is made possible in part by Kershaw Knives of Portland, Oregon, makers of precision tools and cutlery. Kershaw Knives strongly supports outdoor programming as well as responsible outdoor activities throughout the Pacific Northwest. And by Subaru, engineered and designed for all types of activities in the great outdoors. The craftsmen and women that repair and supply parts for Subaru West believe that enjoyment of the Pacific Northwest should be available to everyone. And by alltrek.com. Alltrek provides high-performance clothing and gear for every outdoor experience, including paddling, camping, hiking, climbing, and more. Information can be found online at alltrek.com.